What's up, savvy expats? Have you ever wondered what it's like to live in a country with a 58 peso to $1 exchange rate where your money can stretch so much further here? Just imagine, you're middle class in the West, but just by simply taking a flight across the pond, you've arbitraged your lifestyle to automatically put you within the upper echelons of society here. And so you can see why this is such a big incentive for foreign retirees. Because after having helped so many expats make the move out here to the Philippines, I've noticed that they all say the same thing. The reason why they left the US for the Philippines is because retirement in the West is no longer as feasible as it used to be. And even for those who can manage to retire in the US, they'd rather 2x their lifestyle out here in the Philippines by getting more bang for their buck. That being said, for those of you who are rolling in the dough, in this video we'll be diving into the do's and don'ts of living lavish here in the Philippines. Now, before we first touch on the first do of living lavish in the Philippines, we must first discuss what do we even consider a lavish budget here? Well, what's statistically classified as 1% income here in the Philippines is $5,000 per month or $60,000 annually in the bank. And to put things into perspective, the average surgeon and judge here make around $5,000 per month. And to be frank, as someone from the West, you may think that that is quite low of a salary for their specific line of work and occupation. Because while a surgeon in the Philippines will make anywhere up to $60K per year, in the US we compare that and surgeons can make anywhere upwards of $300,000 per year. So again, that does prove my point. You can be working a middle-class job in the US and still you'd be pinching pennies because everything out there is so expensive. But then you take that middle-class income and bring it out here to the Philippines, and then all of a sudden you're balling like never before. So to answer the question, statistically speaking, if you're racking in anything over 5K per month in the Philippines, that would put you into the upper class of society here. So what do you do with all this money? Well, the first do of living lavishly in the Philippines, which I advise, is to live in a major city. But Evan, what's the point of living in the Philippines if I'm not living by the beach and sipping on coconuts? I get it. You want to live in the Philippines to experience what the Philippines actually has to offer. The crystal clear tropical waters, the $300 rental houses you always hear from these Dumaguete expats, and the simple local lifestyle. And if that's the life that you truly want, by all means, go for it. But if you do have the means to live the high life out here, I do advise that you consider living in one of the major cities out here. Why? Well, for one, the Western amenities. I don't know about you, but for me, having the peace of mind that I live near a world-class medical facility, God forbid anything goes south, for me, that's invaluable. The last thing that you want is to be deep in the province and the nearest hospital can't treat you or simply provide medicine that you normally find in the West. And speaking of peace of mind, we also can't forget the safety aspect. If you're living in any one of the major cities in the Philippines, which I'm about to talk about, you can be 90% sure that you're in good hands. These three cities are anywhere in BGC, Makati, and Rockwell. Of course, Cebu is somewhere in the mix there, but in my opinion, it doesn't compare to these three major cities. The last reason you should consider living in a major city is for the convenience. We've already touched on the importance of being near Western amenities, both for healthcare reasons, but also to be in close proximity to a diversity of restaurants, shops, and stores. And it's convenient should you want access to the same things that you have had back at home. But another reason why you still maintain convenience living in a major city in the Philippines is because anything that you want to experience in this country is still completely at your disposal. I always preach about the importance of making the city your nest egg for the sake of having access to Western conveniences on a daily basis. I'm talking having access to international standard medical facilities, strong reliable Wi-Fi, and being near worldwide stores and restaurants. Now, I don't know about you, but these three things are usually a necessity to live a high quality lifestyle on a daily basis. Frankly, most provinces deep in the middle of no man's land in the Philippines don't usually offer these three things. So I advise, make the city your nest egg, but when you are itching for a getaway, you can simply take a 1-hour drive or flight out to the province whenever you please. If there's anything that I learned about living in the Philippines as opposed to the US, almost everything and anything is completely accessible and also affordable to access. For example, I'm currently living in BGC, where in my opinion it has the best Western amenities. If I want my lifestyle to be 180 so that I can go to the beach and live in the province, it's really easy to just hire a driver and take a 1-hour trip out to the province. Say I want to go surfing, just call the driver and then a 3-hour drive out to a place like La Union. If not, we'll do a 1-hour flight down to Siargao for less than $100. So you see, and I do hate to compare, but even without a lavish budget, you can live a lifestyle in the States that most people can only live once every 4 months when they get a break from work, because they simply still have to keep up with absurdly high bills and also be in their 9 to 5. Now, before we dive into the first don't of living lavish here, quick announcement. As we near the end of June, we only have 2 more slots left for our 1-to-1 expat relocation program. That said, if you're planning on moving to the Philippines within the next 1 to 4 months, I'm here to take care of the entire logistical process of your transition. Whether that be securing your rental unit, opening up your bank account, attaining a healthcare plan, or acquiring the best visa for your situation, my goal is to make this the smoothest transition possible for this next chapter of your life. We only deal with expats that are serious about their move. So if that's you, book a call with me in the link down below and I'll see if we're a good fit to work together. All right, switching gears into the don'ts of living lavish in the Philippines. That is, don't flaunt your wealth. This applies just about anywhere in the world, so I don't really need to expand much on this. Despite this, I still have to touch on this because you'd be surprised how many expats still learn this the hard way. Reason being is because most expats in the States are considered Joe Schmo. Then they come out here to the Philippines and then automatically, all of a sudden, they're considered rich by the locals and everything is pennies for them. As a result of this, they flaunt their wealth and they become flashy. This is the last thing you want to do because 1, you attract the wrong circle, and 2, you eventually outspend yourself trying to keep up with that kind of lifestyle. And it's happened to countless expats out here because it's so easy to fall into that rabbit hole of vices out here in the Philippines, especially as opposed to in the States. And I don't even have to mention how many expats have got burned by their quote-unquote companion or partner at the time because they were too busy flashing and exposing the money they had. Now, back to the do's of living in the Philippines. The second do of living lavish in this country is do consider hiring local staff. Whether it's house help, maid, drivers, and cooks, or employees for business, personal assistants, virtual assistants, in any occupation, there's a reason why hundreds of Western businesses outsource to the Philippines. And there's a reason why the Philippines is one of the biggest BPO or business process outsourcing countries, and it makes up the majority of this country as an industry. And that's because it's so cheap to hire and outsource in the Philippines. You can hire a virtual assistant here for less than $3 an hour. You don't want to deal with house chores? No problem. You can hire a maid for less than $200 a month here. And God knows that driving here is much like the Wild West. For that, you can hire a personal driver on call for less than $600 a month here. I get it. It may seem over the top to hire house help and staff because in the West, only the upper class really do that. But as someone who's done it, I can tell you it truly is worth its weight in gold. Every penny, every peso makes your life a world of easier. But I must say, do be warned, however, that finding staff here that is number 1, trustworthy, but more importantly than that, competent, does take sifting through a lot of individuals, and it takes time to find. I've been through countless of staff here, whether it be for personal, whether it be for business, and let me tell you, when you find the right person, you have to hold on to them. That being said, I had to curate my own team of staff for both personal and business, and if you're looking for the same thing of staff and individuals have been personally vetted by me, feel free to reach out to me in the first link down below and I can see who I can allocate to you. Now, for the second don't of living in the Philippines, which of course goes without saying, is don't get caught up with the wrong partner. Evan, this is like telling me that 1 + 1 = 2. I get it. But the reason I cannot stress this enough is because understand this. As a foreigner, you're already going to get a lot of attention here as it is. But to add on to that, if people find out that you're making more money than the locals here, and not just that, but most other foreigners out here in the Philippines, let's just say you'll be considered a hot commodity. You're going to be flooded with options out here in the Philippines. And of course, what comes along with that is options that just want you for one thing and one thing only. In my opinion, that's not always a bad thing as long as both parties mutually understand what they're bringing to the table. But if you're looking for a lifelong companion that will be there with you regardless of your bank balance, then do keep this word of advice. Now for the third and last do on our list for living lavish in the Philippines, that is, do consider getting a retirement visa. If you have some extra cash on the side that you're working with, I highly advise that you consider getting a retirement visa. Reason being is because once you acquire this visa, it saves you from having to go to the Bureau of Immigration to constantly extend your tourist visa. Essentially, you're granted permanent residency in the country with other minor benefits such as discounts at certain establishments. And that may bring you to wonder, how do I qualify for a retirement visa? First things first, you must be 50 years old or older. Second, there's two primary kinds of retirement visas. The first is the Special Resident Retiree Visa Classic, or for short, the SRRV Classic. This is for retirees with a pension, and the deposit for this visa is $10,000, which can be withdrawn eventually. The second kind of retirement visa is the SRRV Expanded Courtesy, which is for former military. To keep it short, if you were in the military, you would qualify for this visa, and the deposit is only $1,500. Now for the third and last don't of living lavish in the Philippines, that is, don't fall into vices. And I get it, at this point you may be thinking, Evan, all the don'ts on this list are still completely applicable to anywhere else in the world. Yes, I understand, but I must stress, I have seen so many expats that have had manageable vices back in the States, but as soon as they come out here to the Philippines, they go overboard and those vices are magnified. Why? Because satisfying those vices are so much cheaper out here in Southeast Asia as you'd expect. It doesn't matter if it's drugs, smoking, gambling, or relationships. Engaging in these vices are much more tempting out here. Because ultimately, and I'll say it as it is, you have so much more going for you here. Number one, you're in the 1% here, or you're at least considered upper class. Two, your expenses are severely decreased. And three, especially if you have the dollar here, you can bend almost everything and anything to your wants and needs whenever you please, unlike you've ever seen, if you catch my drift. So with all this freed up cash, simply because your expenses have been severely lowered, you can imagine all the more how tempting it is to dabble within these vices just because you can. You're retired, you're free, expenses are lower, and you can do whatever you want. And on top of that, you don't have the previous relationships and connections that you did have in the States or in your home country to keep you accountable and say no. So once again, the last thing you want is to fall into the world of vices out here. And so there you have it, savvy expats. Those are the do's and don'ts of living lavish in the Philippines. As always, if you're planning on moving out here and you need a bit extra guidance, you can always check out my free 15-step Philippine arrival checklist and the link in the description down below. In this checklist, I run you through the initial steps that you need to take for your transition here. From finding your rental to navigating the visa and breaking processes, we cover all of this in this guide. And so thank you for watching, Savvy Expats. As always, it was a pleasure, and we'll see you in the next video. God bless.